I should have left him there to die in the rain. The thought came back to me every night after, echoing louder than the storm that started it all. That night, the sky had split open like something angry, rain hammering down in thick sheets that blurred the road ahead of me into nothing but streaks of white and red. My windshield wipers struggled to keep up, dragging back and forth in a rhythm that felt too slow, too weak for the chaos outside. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles pale, trying to focus on the faint yellow lines cutting through the dark highway just 10 miles outside the city. It was nearly midnight, and I was exhausted, coming off a 12-hour shift at the clinic, my scrubs still clinging damp against my skin. I just wanted to get home, kick off my shoes, and pretend the world was quiet for a few hours. Then I saw him. At first, I thought it was debris, some piece of trash blown into the road by the wind, but then it moved. Just slightly. Enough to make my foot slam on the brakes before my brain could catch up. The car skidded, tires protesting against the slick asphalt, stopping just a few feet away from a man lying across the center line. For a second, I just sat there, heart pounding so hard it drowned out the storm. This wasn't my problem. That was the first clear thought that formed. People didn't end up like this, alone, injured, in the middle of nowhere, without something dangerous following close behind. Every instinct I had told me to lock the doors and drive away. I even reached for the gear shift. But then he tried to move again. A small, weak motion, like he was fighting just to stay conscious. And something in me broke. No, I whispered, already opening the door before I could talk myself out of it. The rain hit me instantly, soaking through my clothes in seconds, cold and relentless. I ran to him, dropping to my knees on the wet pavement. Up close, it was worse. His breathing was shallow, uneven, like each breath cost him more than the last. His clothes were dark, expensive looking even in the storm, but torn, clinging to him. My hands hovered for a second, unsure where to even begin. "Hey," I said, my voice shaking. "Can you hear me?" No response, just the faint rise and fall of his chest. I looked around, scanning the empty road, the dark tree lines stretching endlessly on both sides. No headlights. No help. Just me and a stranger who might not make it if I did nothing. I swallowed hard. I knew better. I really did. But I also knew I couldn't leave him. Not like this. "Okay," I muttered to myself, sliding my arms under his shoulders. "You're not dying out here tonight." He was heavier than he looked, solid, his weight dead against me as I struggled to pull him toward my car. My shoes slipped on the wet asphalt, my breath coming in sharp bursts. But somehow, inch by inch, I managed to get him to the passenger side. It took everything I had to lift him into the seat, his head falling back, water dripping from his hair onto the upholstery. I slammed the door shut, stumbling around to the driver's side, my hands shaking so badly, I fumbled the keys twice before starting the engine. "What are you doing, Naomi?" I whispered to myself as I pulled back onto the road. "You don't know him. You don't know what this is." But it was too late now. The decision had already been made. My house was only 7 minutes away, a small, isolated place I rented at the edge of town, surrounded by trees and silence. It had always felt safe before. That night, it felt like I was bringing a storm inside with me. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my heart was racing again, but for a different reason. The weight of what I'd done was starting to settle in. I parked, cut the engine, and just sat there for a second, listening to the rain pound against the roof. Then I forced myself to move. Getting him inside was harder than getting him into the car. My arms burned, my back screamed in protest, but I didn't stop. I dragged him through the front door, across the hardwood floor, leaving a trail of water behind us. "This is insane," I muttered under my breath, kicking the door shut. "This is actually insane." I managed to get him onto the couch, stepping back for a moment, trying to catch my breath. He looked different under the warm light of my living room. Still pale, still barely conscious, but there was something else now. Something sharp. Even like this, there was a presence about him that didn't belong in my quiet little world. I grabbed a towel, a first aid kit, anything I could think of, my movements automatic, trained from years of taking care of people who needed help. As I worked, carefully cleaning him up, trying to steady his breathing, I kept telling myself this was just what I did. I helped people. That was it. Nothing more. Nothing complicated. But then his hand moved. Fast. Strong. Fingers wrapping around my wrist before I could react. I froze. His eyes opened slowly, dark and focused despite everything, locking onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. For a second, neither of us spoke. The storm outside faded into the background, replaced by the sound of my own heartbeat. Why? His voice was rough, low, but steady enough to send a chill down my spine. Would someone like you help me? The words weren't grateful. They weren't soft. They were sharp, suspicious, like he didn't trust kindness, like he didn't believe in it. I swallowed, trying to pull my wrist free, but his grip tightened just enough to stop me. Not painful, just controlled. Because you needed help, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. That's all. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze searching, calculating. Then, slowly, his grip loosened, his hand falling back to the couch as if even that small movement had cost him more than he wanted to admit. I stepped back immediately, putting distance between us, my mind racing. Something wasn't right. I could feel it now, deep in my chest, that quiet warning I should have listened to earlier. This man, he wasn't just some stranger I found on the road. And whatever had put him there wasn't far behind. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just saved someone. I had invited something dangerous into my home. The way he looked at me did not fade after he closed his eyes again, and that was what unsettled me the most. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It was awareness. Like he had already decided something about me, and I just did not know what it was yet. I stood there for a few seconds, longer than I should have, staring at him, waiting for his breathing to change, for something to make sense. Nothing did. The storm outside pressed harder against the windows, wind rattling the glass in sharp bursts that made the house feel smaller than it was. I forced myself to move. Standing still was not going to help either of us. I went back to the kitchen, my hands still trembling as I filled a bowl with warm water and grabbed clean cloths. I told myself to focus on the simple things. Clean. Steady. Breathe. When I came back, he had not moved much, but something about the room felt different. He was not unconscious in the way people usually were. There was tension in him, like a coiled spring that had not fully released. I knelt beside the couch again, more cautious this time, more aware of every inch of space between us. I worked quietly, careful not to startle him, even though I was not sure he was fully aware of anything at all. His jacket was heavier than I expected when I eased it off, the fabric expensive, tailored, the kind of thing you did not wear unless you were used to being seen. That alone should have been enough to make me stop. People like that did not end up on empty roads in the middle of a storm without a reason. My fingers paused for just a second before I continued. Too late to turn back now. I set the jacket aside and focused on what I could control, pressing the cloth gently, making sure his breathing stayed even. The room was quiet except for the rain and the soft sound of my movements. It almost felt normal. Almost. Then headlights flashed across the front windows. I froze. It was quick. Just a sweep of light cutting through the room before disappearing again, but it was enough. My heart jumped into my throat. Someone was out there. I stayed perfectly still, listening. The engine's sound was faint, almost swallowed by the storm, but it was there. Slow. Controlled. Not someone just passing through. My gaze moved back to him instinctively. His eyes were open again. This time there was no delay. No confusion. Just focus. He had heard it too. We did not speak. We did not need to. The tension in the room shifted, thickening, pressing in on us from all sides. He pushed himself up slightly, his movement sharp despite the strain it clearly cost him. I reached out without thinking. Do not, he said quietly. The word stopped me instantly. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just absolute. I pulled my hand back. He swung his legs over the side of the couch, steadying himself with one hand, his posture controlled even as his breathing remained uneven. It did not make sense. Someone in his condition should not have been able to move like that. You need to lie down, I said, keeping my voice low. He ignored me. His attention was on the window, on the faint shifting light outside, his expression sharpening into something colder. Calculating. Dangerous. I felt it then. The difference. The man on the road had been vulnerable. This one was not. Who was out there? I asked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. He glanced at me briefly. Just a flicker of attention, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten. If they are here, he said, his voice steady now, it means you should not have stopped your car. The words settled heavily between us. Not a threat. Not exactly. More like a fact I was only now beginning to understand. The engine outside grew louder for a second, then quieter again, like whoever it was moving slowly along the road, searching. My house sat back from the street, partially hidden by trees, easy to miss if you were not looking for it. I had always liked that. Tonight, it felt like a fragile kind of protection. I stepped closer to the window, just enough to see without being seen. The rain blurred everything, turning shapes into shadows, but I could make out the faint outline of a dark vehicle creeping along the edge of the road. Not stopping. Not leaving either. Just watching. My chest tightened. Are they looking for you? I asked. Silence. I turned back to him. He was watching me now, not the window. Studying me in a way that made me feel exposed, like he was measuring something I could not see. You made a choice, he said finally. You do not get to ask that question without consequences. I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding. I found you in the road. I did not sign up for whatever this is. His expression did not change, but something shifted in his eyes. Not softer, just different. No one ever signs up for it, he said. Another sweep of headlights cut through the room, closer this time. I stepped back instinctively. My house suddenly felt too open, too visible. You need to hide, I said quickly. If they come in here, they will not, he interrupted. The certainty in his voice should have been reassuring. It was not, because it did not sound like hope. It sounded like control, like he was used to situations like this, like he expected them. He pushed himself fully to his feet then, slower now, but still steady, adjusting his stance as if he was recalibrating his balance rather than struggling to stand. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man I dragged in from the storm with the one standing in my living room now. They did not match. Not at all. You should not be standing, I said again, softer this time. He took a step forward, then another, each movement deliberate, measured. He stopped a few feet from me, close enough that I could see the rainwater still clinging to his hair, the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes did not miss anything. You are still here, he said. I blinked, caught off guard. What? Most people, he continued, would have run by now. I let out a short breath, something between a laugh and disbelief. In case you have not noticed, it is storming outside. Running is not exactly a great option. For a second, I thought I saw something almost like amusement flicker across his face. It was gone just as quickly. The car outside slowed again. Closer now. Too close. My pulse spiked. This was real. Whatever he had brought with him, it had found us. I looked at him, really looked this time, and felt something settle in my chest. Not fear exactly. Not anymore. Something sharper. You said I made a choice, I said quietly. His gaze held mine. Yes. I nodded once, my throat tight, but my voice steady. Then tell me what I need to do. For the first time since I met him, he did not answer right away. He studied me, searching, as if trying to decide whether I was worth the truth. Outside, the headlights stopped moving. The engine idled, waiting. His voice, when it came, was lower than before. More certain. Stay behind me, he said. And something in the way he said it made me realize one thing I had not fully understood until now. I was not just helping him anymore. I was already part of whatever world he came from. The engine outside idled like it had all the time in the world, and somehow that was worse than anything loud or chaotic. It was patient, controlled, intentional. I stood there, a few steps behind him, exactly where he told me to be, my eyes locked on the front door as if it might move on its own. The rain kept falling, relentless against the roof, but it no longer felt like background noise. It felt like pressure, like the world outside was pushing in, waiting for something to break. He did not rush. That was the first thing I noticed. He did not panic, did not look for somewhere to hide, did not ask me anything else. He simply stood there, shoulders squared, head slightly tilted as if he was listening to something I could not hear. Every part of him felt deliberate, even the stillness. Do not speak unless I tell you to, he said quietly. I swallowed and nodded, even though he was not looking at me. My hands were cold, not from the rain anymore, from the realization settling deeper in my chest. This was not a situation I could explain away. This was not something I could fix with a first aid kit and good intentions. This was something else entirely. The headlights cut across the windows again, brighter this time, closer, flooding the room with a pale glow before fading. The vehicle had stopped. I could feel it. Not see it clearly, but feel it. Right outside. The silence that followed was heavy, stretching longer than it should have. My heartbeat filled the space, loud enough I was sure he could hear it. Then there was a sound. Not a knock. Not at first. Just the faint crunch of gravel under slow, measured footsteps approaching the house. My breath caught. He did not move. Not even a shift in weight. But something changed in the air around him, something sharper, more defined, like a line had been drawn and everything on the other side of it no longer mattered. The knock came then. 3 times. Calm. Even. Not demanding entry. Expecting it. I flinched before I could stop myself. He did not. Of course he did not. He glanced at me briefly, just enough to make sure I was still where he told me to be. Then he stepped forward. 1 step. Then another. Each one controlled, unhurried, as if the people outside were not a threat, but an inevitability. I wanted to tell him to stop, to not open that door. But the words would not come, because something in me already knew he was not the kind of man who hid from anything. He reached the door and paused, his hand hovering just above the handle. For a second, everything felt suspended. The storm, the silence, my breath. Then he opened it. The cold air rushed in first, carrying the scent of rain and something else I could not name. The figure outside stood just beyond the threshold, partially obscured by the darkness and the downpour. Tall. Still. Watching. No one spoke right away. The tension stretched between them, invisible but unmistakable. I stayed where I was, barely breathing, trying to make sense of what I was seeing without stepping out of line. You are far from where you should be, the man outside said finally, his voice steady, almost conversational. Not loud, not aggressive, but it carried weight, the kind that made you listen whether you wanted to or not. The man in front of me did not respond immediately. He leaned slightly against the doorframe, as if he had all the time in the world, even now. And yet, he said after a moment, his tone calm, almost detached, you still found me. The man outside took a step forward, just enough that the light from inside caught part of his face. Clean. Controlled. Not what I expected. Not chaotic or reckless. That made it worse somehow. You made that easier than usual, the man replied. Leaving a trail is not your style. A pause. Then, softer, more pointed. Neither is relying on strangers. I felt that. The words landed heavier than they should have, like they were not just directed at him. Like they included me. My stomach tightened, but I did not move. He did not look back at me. Not once. Careful, he said quietly, not raising his voice. You are standing in someone else's home. The man outside's gaze shifted then, just slightly, scanning past him into the room. I felt it like a physical thing, that attention settling on me even though I had not moved an inch. I forced myself to stay still, to not react, to not give away anything. I am aware, the man said. That is why I am being polite. Polite. The word felt wrong in this moment, like it did not belong here. And yet, no one contradicted it. The man in front of me straightened just a fraction, enough to change the dynamic without making it obvious. Then say what you came to say, he replied. And leave. Another pause. The rain filled it, louder now, like it was trying to cover what was happening. The man outside exhaled slowly. There are people looking for you, he said. More than before. There are always people looking for me. Not like this. A beat. This time, they are not asking questions. The words settled into the space between them, heavier than anything that had been said so far. I did not fully understand what they meant, but I understood enough to know it mattered. A lot. The man in front of me did not react the way I expected. No surprise. No urgency. Just a slight narrowing of his eyes, like he was processing something he had already anticipated. Then they are wasting their time, he said. The man outside shook his head slightly. You still think you are in control. I am. Silence again. Then the man outside's gaze shifted back toward me, more direct this time. I felt it, sharp and assessing, like he was trying to place me into a situation that did not quite fit. She does not belong in this, he said. My breath hitched, but I stayed quiet. I remembered what he told me. Do not speak. The man in front of me did not turn around, did not look at me, but something in his posture changed. Subtle. Protective. She is here, he said simply. That is enough. The words were quiet, but final. Something passed between them then. Not visible, not spoken, but understood. The man outside studied him for a long moment, then stepped back slightly, the rain swallowing more of his figure again. You are making this more complicated than it needs to be, he said. I always do. A faint shift. Not quite a smile, but close. Then the man outside nodded once. "Do not stay here long," he said. "They will not hesitate." The door closed before I could process anything else. Just like that, the storm returned to being the loudest thing in the world. I stood there, my body still tense, my mind racing to catch up with everything that had just happened. Slowly, he turned back toward me. His expression was different now. Not colder, not warmer, just decided. "Get your things," he said. My stomach dropped. "What?" His gaze held mine, steady, unyielding. "You cannot stay here anymore." The words landed harder than anything else tonight. Because deep down, I knew he was right. And somehow, without realizing it, I had already crossed the point where I could pretend otherwise. The words did not feel real at first. "You cannot stay here anymore." They echoed in my head, slower than everything else that had just happened, like my mind was refusing to catch up. I stared at him, trying to find something in his expression that would soften it, that would turn it into a suggestion instead of a decision. There was nothing. "This is my house," I said, my voice quieter than I expected. It sounded small in the space between us. He did not react to the words themselves, only to what they meant. "Not anymore," he said. Not harsh, not raised, just certain. The storm outside pressed harder against the walls, wind dragging branches against the windows with a low, scraping sound that made everything feel fragile. I shook my head slightly, taking a step back without realizing it. "You do not get to decide that," I said, forcing more strength into my voice this time. "You showed up here. I helped you. That does not mean you get to tell me to leave my own home." For a second, I thought I had crossed something. Not a line exactly, but a boundary I did not understand. His gaze sharpened, just slightly, enough to make my chest tighten. Then it shifted again. Not softer, but focused. "Listen to me," he said, stepping closer. Not threatening, not aggressive, but there was nowhere for my attention to go except him. "They know this location now." I opened my mouth to argue, but he continued before I could. "Maybe not your name, maybe not your face, but they know this place exists. That is enough." I hesitated, just for a second, because part of me understood that. Understood the way the car had moved outside, the way the man had spoken, calm, controlled, like this was not new to them. "They left," I said, quieter now. "Whoever that was, he left." "Yes," he replied. "He did." A pause. Then, more deliberate. "That does not mean others will." The words settled into me slowly, like something cold spreading under my skin. I glanced toward the door, half expecting to see headlights again, to hear footsteps, to feel that pressure return. Nothing. Just the storm. Just the quiet. "I cannot just leave," I said. "I have a job. I have a life. I stopped. The sentence felt unfinished even before I reached the end of it. Because suddenly, none of those things felt as solid as they had an hour ago. He watched me carefully, like he could see that shift happening in real time. "You had those things," he said. The correction was small, but it landed harder than anything else. I looked back at him, something sharper rising in my chest now. Not fear, not confusion, something closer to frustration. "You do not know anything about my life," I said. "You do not get to walk in here and rewrite it." For the first time, something like a reaction crossed his face. Not anger. Not exactly. More like recognition. "You are right," he said. That caught me off guard. Completely. I blinked, thrown off balance by the lack of resistance. "I do not know your life," he continued. "But I know what happens when people are connected to me, even by accident." The room felt smaller again. "And what happens?" I asked, my voice steady even though my hands were not. He held my gaze. Did not look away. Did not soften the answer. "It changes." Simple. Direct. Unavoidable. I let out a slow breath, trying to steady myself, trying to hold on to something that still felt like mine. "I am not going anywhere," I said finally. The words came out stronger this time. More certain. "Not because you say so." Silence followed. Heavy. Measured. He did not argue right away. Did not push. Just watched me like he was recalculating something. Then he moved. Not toward the door. Not toward the window. Toward me. Slow. Deliberate. He stopped just within reach, close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the faint trace of exhaustion still lingering beneath the control. "You think this is about control," he said quietly. "It is not." I swallowed, my pulse picking up again despite myself. "Then what is it about?" He did not answer immediately. His gaze dropped for a fraction of a second, like he was considering how much to say. Then it lifted again, locking onto mine with that same intensity one could not ignore. Survival, he said. The word hung there between us, heavier than anything else tonight. Because it did not feel like a warning. It felt like a fact. I hesitated. Just enough for him to see it. If you stay, he continued, his voice lower now, more deliberate, you are no longer separate from this. He gestured slightly toward the door, toward the road, toward whatever world existed beyond my quiet little house. You become part of it. My chest tightened. I did not choose that. His expression shifted again. Subtle. But there. You stopped your car, he said. And just like that, everything looped back to the beginning. The rain. The road. The moment I should have kept driving. I looked away from him then, just for a second, trying to catch my breath, trying to find something solid to hold on to. My house. My space. My life. But all I could think about was the way the headlights had moved. The way the man outside had looked at me. The way none of this felt like it would simply go away. How long? I asked quietly. He did not pretend not to understand the question. Long enough, he said. That was not an answer. Not really. But it was enough to tell me this was not temporary. Not something that would resolve itself by morning. I closed my eyes for a second, just one, letting the weight of it settle fully this time. When I opened them again, he was still there. Still watching. Still waiting. If I leave, I said slowly, choosing each word carefully. This does not just end, does it? His silence answered that question before he spoke. No, he said finally. My throat tightened. Then why does it matter where I am? For the first time, something in his expression softened. Just slightly. Just enough to change the meaning behind his words. Because where you are, he said, determines whether you survive it. The room fell quiet again. The storm still raged outside. The house still stood around me. But everything felt different now. Not broken. Not destroyed. Just shifted. I looked at him, really looked this time, and realized something I had been avoiding since the moment I pulled him off that road. This was not about him leaving. It never had been. It was about me following. If I go, I said quietly, I go with you. It was not a question. His gaze held mine, steady, unreadable for a moment. Then, slowly he nodded. And somehow, that felt like the point where everything changed for real. The nod should not have felt like a door closing, but it did. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet and final, like something inside my life had shifted into a place it could not return from. I did not move right away. Neither did he. For a few seconds, we just stood there, the storm filling the silence between us, both of us understanding that whatever came next was not going to be simple. You have 5 minutes, he said finally. His voice was calm again, controlled, like he had already moved on to the next step while I was still trying to process the last one. 5 minutes for what? I asked, even though I already knew. Anything you cannot leave behind, he said. I let out a slow breath, my eyes drifting around the room. My couch. My kitchen. The small shelf by the window with the plants I always forgot to water. None of it looked different. But none of it felt like mine anymore either. I turned away from him and walked toward my bedroom, each step heavier than it should have been. 5 minutes. How do you choose a life in 5 minutes? I opened the closet and just stood there, staring at rows of clothes that suddenly felt irrelevant. Work scrubs, jeans, sweaters, things meant for a version of me that was already slipping away. I reached for a bag without thinking, pulling it down and setting it on the bed. My hands moved automatically, grabbing essentials. A few changes of clothes. My wallet. My phone charger. Practical things. Safe things. Things that made it feel like I still had some control over what was happening. But then my hand paused over the nightstand. A small framed photo sat there. Me and my younger sister, taken years ago, both of us laughing at something I could not even remember anymore. I picked it up, my thumb brushing over the glass. This mattered. This was real. Not the storm. Not the man in my living room. This. I slipped it into the bag carefully, like it might break if I moved too fast. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep going. No time to fall apart. Not now. Not when everything was still moving forward whether I was ready or not. I zipped the bag and slung it over my shoulder, taking one last look around the room. It looked the same, but it did not feel like home anymore. I walked back out into the living room, my grip tightening slightly on the strap of the bag. He was exactly where I left him, standing near the door. Still, focused, like he had not moved at all. But something about him felt different again. More alert, more present. Like whatever moment of vulnerability I had seen earlier was completely gone now. I am ready, I said, my voice steady despite everything. His eyes flicked briefly to the bag, taking in the details without asking any questions. Then he nodded once. Stay close, he said. I almost laughed at that. Stay close. Like I had anywhere else to go. He reached for the door, pausing just long enough to listen again. The storm had not let up. If anything, it had grown worse, wind pushing harder against the house, rain coming down in heavier sheets. The world outside felt unpredictable, dangerous, but somehow, standing next to him, it felt like the only direction left. He opened the door. Cold air rushed in again, sharp against my skin, carrying the scent of wet earth and something electric. I stepped out behind him, pulling my jacket tighter around me, my bag heavy against my shoulder. The gravel crunched under my shoes as we moved toward the driveway. My car sat there, quiet, familiar. A part of me wanted to run to it, to grab the keys, to drive anywhere that was not this. But I knew better now. Running without direction was not escape. It was just delay. A dark vehicle waited at the edge of the road, barely visible through the rain. Not the same one from before. This one felt different. Intentional. Waiting. He did not hesitate. He walked straight toward it, his pace steady, unhurried, like this was exactly where he was supposed to be. I followed, my heartbeat loud in my ears, every step pulling me further away from the only life I had known. The rear door of the vehicle opened before we even reached it. No one stepped out. No one spoke. It was just there. Ready. He gestured slightly for me to get in first. I hesitated. Just for a second. Because this was it. The line I could still pretend not to cross. Once I stepped into that car, there was no pretending anymore. He noticed. Of course he did. You can still go back inside, he said quietly. The words surprised me. Not because of what they meant, but because of how calm he sounded saying them. No pressure. No force. Just an option. I looked past him, back toward the house. The windows glowed faintly in the storm, warm light cutting through the darkness. It looked safe. It looked like something I could return to. But I knew better now. It was not safe. Not anymore. Not after tonight. Not after him. I let out a breath, steadying myself. No, I said. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just certain. Then I stepped forward and climbed into the car. The interior was warm. Quiet. Controlled. The door closed behind me with a soft, final sound that felt louder than it should have. He got in after me, the door shutting again, sealing us inside. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The car did not move yet. It just sat there, the engine running low, like it was waiting for confirmation that everything was in place. I stared ahead, my reflection faint in the dark glass, trying to recognize the person looking back at me. She looked the same, but she was not. What happens now? I asked finally, my voice quieter than before. He turned his head slightly, his gaze settling on me again. Not cold, not warm, just certain. Now, he said, you learn the difference between helping someone and belonging to their world. The car began to move. Slow at first, then faster. The house disappeared behind us, swallowed by the storm, its light fading until it was gone completely. I did not look back again, because something told me that if I did, I might hesitate. And hesitation was no longer something I could afford. The road disappeared faster than I expected, like it had been waiting to let go of me the second I stopped looking back. Rain streaked across the windows, distorting everything outside into blurred lines of light and shadow, and for a moment, I could not tell where we were going or how far we had already gone. The car moved smoothly, steady and controlled, nothing like the chaos outside. Inside, it was quiet. Too quiet. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, my bag pressed against my knees, feeling every mile like a thread pulling me further away from something I could not return to. He had not said anything since the car started moving. Neither had I. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable, but heavy with everything neither of us was explaining. I glanced toward him once, carefully, trying not to make it obvious. He sat beside me like he belonged in that space, shoulders relaxed, posture composed, as if the storm, the road, everything we had just left behind was already irrelevant to him. It was unsettling. The way he could shift so quickly, from bleeding on the road to this. You are staring, he said without looking at me. I blinked, caught off guard, immediately turning my gaze back to the window. I am trying to understand, I replied. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. That seemed to get his attention. I could feel it before I saw it, the slight shift as his focus moved toward me. Understand what? He asked. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. You, I said. This. All of it. He let out a quiet breath, not quite a laugh, but close. That would take longer than this drive, he said. I frowned slightly, my fingers tightening against the fabric of my bag. Then start with something simple, I said. Like your name. The silence that followed was different this time. Not empty. Measured. I turned to look at him again, this time directly, holding his gaze. He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding whether I had earned the answer or not. Then, finally, he spoke. Alexander, he said. The name settled into the space between us, simple but heavy in a way I could not explain. It fit him. Too well. Naomi, I said quietly, even though he had not asked. His eyes flicked to me again, something unreadable passing through them. I know, he replied. That should not have surprised me. Not after everything else. But it did. How? I asked. He did not answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window briefly, as if checking something I could not see, before returning his attention to me. I make it a point to know who is involved in my situation, he said. The phrasing was careful, intentional. It told me just enough without giving anything away. I leaned back slightly in my seat, letting that sink in. So I am involved now, I said. Not a question, a statement. He did not deny it. The car turned onto a different road, smoother, wider. The rain still fell hard, but the surroundings felt different. More structured, less isolated. I could see faint outlines of buildings in the distance now, lights glowing through the storm. Civilization. Or at least, something closer to it. You crossed into it the moment you stopped your car, he said. I let out a slow breath, my gaze dropping to my hands. That moment again. Everything kept coming back to it. One decision. One choice. And now here I was. In a car with a man I barely knew, heading somewhere I had never been, leaving behind everything that had once made sense. You keep saying that, I said softly. Like it was inevitable. It was, he replied. I looked up at him sharply. No, I said. It was a choice. He held my gaze, unshaken. Those are not always different things, he said. The words lingered, heavier than I expected. I did not have an answer for that. Not right away. The car slowed slightly as we approached a set of gates, tall and dark against the storm, barely visible until we were right in front of them. They opened without hesitation. No delay. No question. Just recognition. My chest tightened. This was not random. This was not temporary. This was his world. The car moved forward again, passing through the gates, the sound of rain shifting. As we entered a more sheltered drive, trees lined the path, their branches heavy with water. Lights placed strategically along the ground, casting a soft glow that cut through the darkness. It felt controlled, protected, designed. I stared out the window, taking it all in, my mind trying to keep up. Where are we? I asked quietly. Somewhere safe, he said. The answer was simple, but it did not feel simple. The car came to a stop in front of a large structure, its outline sharp even in the rain, modern but solid, like it had been built to last through anything. The engine went quiet, leaving only the sound of the storm outside. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he reached for the door. Stay close, he said again. I almost smiled at that this time. Not because it was funny, but because it was becoming familiar. He stepped out first. I followed, the cold air hitting me immediately, rain soaking through my jacket in seconds. The difference now was that I did not hesitate. I stayed close, exactly where he told me to be. The front doors opened before we reached them. Not automatically. Someone inside. Watching. Waiting. We stepped into warmth. Into light. Into a space that felt completely removed from everything outside. The doors closed behind us with a soft, final sound. And just like that, the storm was gone. I stood there for a second, taking it in. The polished floors. The quiet. The way everything felt intentional, like nothing existed here by accident. This was not just a place. It was a statement. You will stay here for now, he said. I turned to him, my bag still in my hand, my thoughts still catching up to everything that had happened. For now, I repeated. He nodded once. Until it is decided what happens next. The words should have worried me more than they did. But I was too tired, too far in, too aware that whatever came next was already in motion. I looked around the space again, then back at him. And what happens next? I asked. He held my gaze, steady as always, But this time there was something else there. Not softer, not warmer, just honest. That depends, he said, on how well you adapt. The words settled into me slowly, like everything else tonight. And for the first time since I left my house, I realized something I had not fully understood before. This was not just about surviving his world. It was about whether I could belong in it at all. The silence inside that place was different from the silence in my house. It was not empty. It was controlled. Like every sound had been decided in advance, and anything outside of that did not belong. I stood there, still holding my bag, still trying to catch up to everything that had happened, but the space around me made it harder, not easier. It was too calm, too perfect, like it was hiding something underneath. You are cold, he said. I blinked, pulled back from my thoughts, realizing for the first time that my clothes were still damp from the rain, clinging to my skin, the chills settling deeper the longer I stood still. I am fine, I replied automatically. He did not argue. He did not insist. He just looked at me for a second longer than necessary, like he was measuring whether that answer mattered. Then he turned slightly. Someone will take care of that, he said. As if on cue, a woman appeared from the hallway to the right. I had not heard her approach. That alone made something tighten in my chest. She moved with quiet efficiency, her posture straight, her expression calm but observant. Nothing about her felt careless. Miss Brooks, she said, her voice smooth, professional, but not cold. If you would follow me. I hesitated. Just a fraction. My eyes flicked back to him. He did not say anything. Did not nod. Did not give permission. But he did not stop it either. And somehow that was enough. I adjusted my grip on my bag and followed her. The hallway stretched longer than I expected, lined with soft lighting that did not hurt the eyes but revealed everything clearly. Doors on both sides. Closed. Private. The air smelled faintly of something clean and subtle, like it had been designed to make people feel at ease without realizing why. I did not feel at ease. You will have a room prepared for you, she said as we walked. Clothing will be provided. If there is anything specific you require, you may let me know. Her tone was polite, respectful, but there was something underneath it. Not unkind, just aware. Like she knew more about my situation than she was saying. How long am I staying? I asked. The question came out before I could filter it. She did not slow her pace. That depends, she said. The same answer he gave me. Different voice. Same meaning. We stopped in front of a door near the end of the hall. She opened it without hesitation, stepping aside to let me enter first. The room inside was larger than my entire apartment. Clean lines. Soft colors. Everything placed with intention. A bed that looked untouched. A chair by the window. A small table with a glass of water already waiting. It did not feel like a guest room. It felt like a space that had been prepared in advance. Your belongings may be placed there, she said, gesturing lightly toward the bed. I stepped inside slowly, my eyes taking everything in, trying to find something that felt familiar. There was nothing. Thank you, I said, because it felt like I should. She inclined her head slightly. You may rest, she added. He will send for you when necessary. The words lingered longer than they should have. He will send for you. Not if. When. I nodded once, even though I did not fully understand what that meant yet. She turned and left, the door closing behind her with that same quiet finality I was starting to recognize. I stood there alone, the silence pressing in again, but this time it felt different. Not controlled. Not distant. Just heavy. I set my bag down on the bed slowly, my fingers lingering on the strap for a second before letting go. This was real. There was no going back to before. No simple explanation. No easy way to undo any of it. I moved toward the window, pulling the curtain aside just enough to look out. The storm was still there. Still raging. But it felt far away now, like it belonged to another world entirely. The ground stretched out beyond the glass, lights marking the edges of the path, everything contained, everything deliberate. Safe. Or at least, what passed for safe here. I let the curtain fall back into place and turned away, exhaling slowly. My body was starting to feel the exhaustion now, the weight of everything catching up all at once. But my mind would not slow down. Not yet. There were too many questions. Too many pieces that did not fit together. And at the center of all of it, him. Alexander. The name echoed again, settling deeper this time. He had said I needed to adapt. That what happened next depended on it. Adapt to what? To him. To this place. To a world I did not understand. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands resting on my knees, trying to ground myself in something real. Something steady. But nothing about this felt steady. Not anymore. A soft knock broke the silence. I looked up immediately, my body tensing before I could stop it. Yes, I called, my voice more alert than I intended. The door opened slightly. The same woman stepped inside, holding a folded set of clothes. Dry clothing, she said, placing them carefully at the foot of the bed. You should change. I nodded, watching her closely. Thank you. She paused for a second, her gaze lingering on me, not invasive, but thoughtful. You are adjusting well, she said. I frowned slightly. You do not know me well enough to say that. A faint shift crossed her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. I know enough, she replied. Then she turned and left again, the door closing softly behind her. I stared at the clothes for a moment before reaching for them, the fabric warm, dry, unfamiliar. Everything here was unfamiliar. And yet, there was no hesitation in the way things moved. No uncertainty, just quiet expectation. I changed quickly, the dry fabric settling against my skin, chasing away the cold that had followed me inside. It helped. A little. But it did not change the feeling underneath. I sat back down on the bed, my hands resting in my lap again, my thoughts circling back to the same place. This was not temporary. This was not random. This was something structured, something intentional, and I was in the middle of it. A soft sound echoed faintly from somewhere down the hall. Footsteps. Controlled. Approaching. I lifted my head slightly, my attention sharpening without thinking. The steps stopped outside my door. A brief pause. Then a knock. Not loud. Not demanding. Just enough. My breath slowed, steadying itself as I stood, crossing the room slowly, each step measured. I reached for the handle, hesitating for just a fraction of a second. Before opening it, he stood there, exactly as composed as before, exactly as certain. But up close, there was something else now. Not weakness. Not vulnerability. Just focus. Like whatever came next had already begun. Come with me, he said. No explanation. No hesitation. Just direction. And this time, I did not question it. The moment I opened the door and saw him standing there, I realized something had shifted again. Not around me. Not in the house. In him. It was subtle. Almost impossible to name. But it was there. Like whatever hesitation had existed before was gone completely. Come with me, he said again, his voice low, steady, leaving no space for interpretation. I nodded without thinking, stepping out into the hallway and closing the door behind me. The click sounded louder than it should have, like a marker of something ending before something else even had a name. He did not wait. He turned and walked, his pace measured, expecting me to follow. I did. Of course I did. The hallway felt different now, even though nothing had changed. The same soft lighting, the same quiet, the same closed doors. But walking beside him made everything feel sharper, more defined, like I was seeing the structure of this place for the first time instead of just moving through it. Where are we going? I asked, keeping my voice low, matching the tone of the space around us. He did not slow. Somewhere you need to see, he replied. That was not an answer. Not really. But I had learned quickly that he did not give more than he decided to. We turned a corner, then another, the layout unfolding in a way that felt intentional, like every path had been designed with purpose. No wasted space. No unnecessary movement. Everything here had a function. We stopped in front of a set of double doors at the end of a wider corridor. They were different from the others. Larger. Heavier. More deliberate. He paused for just a second, not to hesitate, but to listen. Then he pushed them open. The room inside was nothing like the one I had just left. It was larger, open, filled with quiet movement. People, several of them, dressed in the same controlled, understated way as the woman from before. No one rushed. No one spoke loudly. But every movement felt precise, like each person knew exactly what they were supposed to be doing at every moment. The energy in the room shifted the second we stepped inside. Not dramatically, not obviously, but I felt it. Attention redirected. Focus sharpened. Without anyone saying a word, they knew he was there. He walked forward without acknowledging it, and the space adjusted around him naturally, like it had been built to do exactly that. I stayed close, just like he told me, my eyes moving carefully, taking everything in without drawing attention to it. This was not chaos. This was control. Organized. Intentional. Dangerous in a way that did not need to show itself. This is where decisions are made, he said quietly, just loud enough for me to hear. I looked at him, then back at the room. About what? I asked. His gaze remained forward. Everything. The words settled heavily. It was not an exaggeration. I could feel that. The weight of it in the way people moved. The way no one questioned anything. The way everything seemed to flow around him without resistance. We stopped near the center of the room. A man approached from across the space, his posture straight, his expression composed but alert. He did not look surprised to see me. That was the part that caught me off guard. Like my presence had already been accounted for before I even arrived. You made it back, the man said, his tone respectful but not submissive. Controlled. Equal in a way I did not fully understand. I did, Alexander replied. Nothing more. No explanation. No detail. The man's eyes shifted to me briefly, assessing, measuring, placing me into whatever structure existed in his mind. Not dismissive. Not welcoming. Just aware. And her, he asked. Alexander did not look at me. She stays, he said. 2 words. Simple. Final. Something passed between them in that moment. Not spoken, but understood. The man nodded once. Then we adjust accordingly. Adjust. The word echoed in my head. Like my presence required a shift in something larger than just this room. Like I was not just an observer anymore. I was a variable. The man stepped back slightly, his attention returning to whatever he had been doing before, but I could feel it, the subtle change in the room, like my existence here had been acknowledged, filed, and integrated into something I could not yet see. I turned to Alexander, my voice quieter now, more controlled. You did not ask me, I said. He glanced at me, just briefly. About what? About staying, I replied. His gaze held mine for a second longer this time. Not dismissive. Not defensive. Just direct. You already made that decision, he said. I felt something tighten in my chest. That was not what I meant. He tilted his head slightly, studying me again, like he was deciding how much to explain. Then he spoke. You think this is about permission, he said. It is not. I frowned slightly. Then what is it about? His expression did not change, but his voice lowered just enough to separate this moment from everything else happening around us. Position, he said. The word was unfamiliar in this context. Or maybe I just did not want to understand it yet. And what is my position? I asked. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the room for a brief moment, as if confirming something I could not see. Then his attention returned to me. That, he said, is what we are about to define. The air felt heavier after that. Not tense. Not hostile. Just precise. Like every second from this point forward mattered in a way I had not fully grasped yet. I glanced around the room again, seeing it differently now. Not just people. Not just movement. Structure. Roles. Hierarchy. Everything placed exactly where it needed to be. And now, I was standing in the middle of it. Not outside. Not observing. Inside. Why me? The question slipped out before I could stop it. It was quieter than I expected. More honest. He looked at me again. Really looked this time, not just assessing, but considering. For the first time since I met him, there was no calculation in his eyes. Just something clear. Because you did not walk away, he said. Simple. Direct. Unavoidable. I held his gaze, the weight of those words settling deeper than anything else he had said tonight. Because he was right. I could have walked away. At the road. At the door. At the car. But I did not. And now I was here. Standing in a place where decisions were made about everything. And somehow, without realizing it, I had just become one of them. The word position did not leave my mind even as the room continued to move around me like I was already part of it. It echoed in everything I saw. The way people stood. The way they spoke. The way they did not need to raise their voices to be heard. Everyone here knew exactly where they belonged. And somehow, I was standing in the only place that did not have a clear line yet. I shifted slightly, my weight adjusting as I tried to ground myself in something steady, but there was nothing familiar to hold on to. Not here. Not anymore. So this is it. I asked quietly, my eyes still scanning the room. You bring me here, and I just become part of whatever this is. He did not answer immediately. He watched me instead, like he was measuring not just what I said, but how I carried it. Then he stepped slightly to the side, just enough to change the angle between us and the rest of the room. Not isolating me. Positioning me. Nothing here is automatic, he said. Not even you. I turned toward him, my brow tightening. Then what happens? He held my gaze, steady, unshaken. You are observed, he said. The simplicity of it made it heavier. By who? I asked. He did not look away. Everyone who matters. I felt that more than I expected. Not fear exactly, but awareness. The kind that settles into your spine and makes you stand a little straighter without realizing it. I glanced around again, this time differently. Not just looking, noticing. The subtle shifts in attention. The brief glances that were not accidental. The way conversations adjusted slightly when we moved closer. They were not staring, but they were aware. Of me. Of him. Of what it meant that I was standing beside him. And what are they deciding? I asked. His answer came without hesitation. Whether you are a risk or an asset. The words landed clean. Sharp. There was no room in them for misunderstanding. I exhaled slowly, my fingers curling slightly at my sides. And what do you think? I asked, my voice quieter now. He did not look away. Not even for a second. That is not the question that matters, he said. I frowned slightly. Then what is? He stepped closer. Not invading. Not threatening. Just enough to bring his voice lower, more direct. What matters is what you decide to be. I held his gaze, the weight of that settling deeper than anything else tonight. Because for the first time, it did not feel like something being done to me. It felt like something being handed to me. A choice. A position. A line I could step into or step away from. But the truth was, I had already stepped into it. And if I choose wrong? I asked. His expression did not change. But something in his eyes sharpened, just slightly. Then this place will not keep you, he said. No threat. No raised voice. Just fact. I nodded once, absorbing that. Because I understood it. Not fully. Not completely. But enough. This was not a place that forced you to stay. It was a place that expected you to prove why you should. A quiet shift in the room drew my attention to the far side, where a screen flickered to life, casting a soft glow across a section of the space. Several people moved toward it, their focus sharpening, their movements becoming more deliberate. Information. Something important. Something immediate. I glanced at him, then back at the screen. What is that? I asked. He followed my gaze briefly, then returned his attention to me. Context, he said. That was all. But it was enough to pull me forward. Not physically. Mentally. I stepped slightly closer to the edge of the room, my eyes focusing on the shifting images, the patterns I did not yet understand, but could feel carried weight. Locations. Movement. Timing. It was not random. Nothing here was random. This is what you meant, I said slowly. Decisions. He nodded once. Every moment, he replied. I let out a quiet breath, my mind catching up in pieces. And you are at the center of it. It was not a question. He did not deny it. That should have unsettled me more than it did. But instead, it clarified something. The way people moved around him. The way the room adjusted. The way even silence felt directed. He was not just part of this structure. He was the point everything aligned around. I turned back to him, my voice quieter now, but steadier than before. Then why am I standing next to you? The question hung there, simple but heavy. Because it did not make sense. Not fully. Not yet. His gaze held mine, unwavering. Because you were not afraid to stand there first, he said. The memory hit instantly. The road. The rain. The moment I chose not to leave. I felt it again, sharper this time, more defined. Not just a decision. A line. One that had led directly here. I looked down briefly, then back up at him, something shifting inside me, something more solid than before. You keep turning everything back to that, I said. He did not disagree. Because that is where it started, he replied. I shook my head slightly, not in denial, but in realization. No, I said. That is where it changed. The distinction mattered. I could feel it now. He studied me for a second, something unreadable passing through his expression. Then, slowly he nodded. Not agreement. Recognition. The room continued to move around us, the quiet rhythm of controlled action never breaking, but I felt different inside it now. Less like I was being carried. More like I was standing. Present. Aware. So what do you want me to do? I asked. The question came out without hesitation this time. No fear. No uncertainty. Just direction. His answer was immediate. Pay attention, he said. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was simple, but because it was not. Not here. Not in a place where everything meant more than it showed. And then, I pressed. He held my gaze for a second longer, then looked back toward the room, toward the movement, toward the structure that had already begun to include me. Then you decide where you stand, he said. The words settled into me fully this time. Not as pressure, not as expectation, as clarity. I looked around again, seeing it differently now. Not as something I had been pulled into, but as something I was standing inside by choice. And for the first time since I stepped into this world, I was not just reacting. I was deciding. The moment I stopped just watching and started understanding, everything in the room changed. Not around me. Inside me. The movement was the same. The people were the same. The quiet, controlled rhythm never broke. But now I could see the patterns. The way one person paused half a second longer before speaking. The way another adjusted position without being told. The way information moved without ever being announced. It was not chaos. It was precision. And for the first time, I was not overwhelmed by it. I was tracking it. You see it now, he said beside me. Not a question. A statement. I did not look at him right away. My eyes stayed on the room, following the subtle shifts, the connections that were not obvious unless you were paying attention. I see enough to know this is not random, I replied. He nodded once, just slightly. Nothing here is. I exhaled slowly, my shoulders settling into a steadier posture without me realizing it. Then what am I supposed to be looking for? I asked. This time, I did look at him. His gaze met mine immediately, like he had been waiting for that question. Pressure points, he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Where things change, he continued. Where decisions stop being theoretical and become real. I turned my attention back to the room, my focus sharpening again. Pressure points. I watched more carefully now. Not just what people were doing. Why? A man near the far table paused mid-sentence as someone approached him with a tablet. Not interruption. Priority. The conversation shifted instantly. No hesitation, no resistance. Another group near the screen adjusted their positions as new information appeared, their movements aligning without a single word spoken. It was like watching something alive. Not loud, not chaotic, but constantly adapting. There, I said quietly, nodding toward the screen. Something just changed. He followed my gaze, but only briefly. Yes, he said. And you noticed it before anyone reacted. I felt something settle in my chest. Not pride. Not exactly. But recognition. Like a piece of this world had just clicked into place. That is what you mean by adapting, I said. He did not respond right away. Instead, he stepped slightly closer, just enough that his voice did not need to carry. Adapting is not reacting after something happens, he said. It is seeing it before it does. The distinction mattered. I could feel it. I watched the room again, this time anticipating, not just observing. The flow, the rhythm, the subtle tension that built before something shifted. And then I saw it. A slight hesitation near the center table. Not obvious, not dramatic, but enough. Enough to signal that something was not aligning the way it should. There, I said again, more certain. This time, that is not right. He did not look where I pointed. Not immediately. He looked at me first, assessing, confirming. Then his attention moved, following my line of sight. A pause, just long enough to register. Then he nodded once. Good, he said. The word was quiet, but it landed heavier than anything else he had said so far. Because it was not about approval. It was about confirmation. I was not just standing here anymore. I was participating. What is it? I asked. He did not answer directly. Instead, he stepped forward, closing the distance to the center of the room, his presence shifting the space around him instantly. I followed, my steps more deliberate now, my awareness sharper. The people near the table adjusted as we approached, their focus tightening, their movements becoming even more precise. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You are hesitating, he said to the man at the table. The statement was calm, controlled, but absolute. The man straightened slightly, his posture correcting without argument. There is a variable that was not accounted for, he replied. I listened closely, my attention locking onto every word, every shift in tone. This was it. A real moment. A pressure point. Then account for it, Alexander said. No frustration. No urgency. Just expectation. The man nodded quickly, adjusting something on the tablet, the tension in his movements smoothing out as he recalibrated. The room responded immediately, the earlier hesitation dissolving into clarity, the flow restoring itself without disruption. It was seamless, controlled, intentional. I watched it all, my mind catching up faster this time, connecting the pieces as they moved. This was not just about power. It was about control at a level I had never seen before. Not forced, not loud, just absolute. He turned back to me then, his gaze steady. "What did you notice?" he asked. The question was direct, focused. I did not hesitate. He was not unsure, I said. He was waiting for confirmation. A slight shift crossed his expression. Not surprise, but interest. "Continue." I held his gaze, the words forming more clearly now. "The hesitation was not weakness," I said. "It was calculation. He just did not have the final piece yet." Silence followed. Not empty. Measured. Then, slowly he nodded. "Exactly," he said. The words settled into me deeper than anything else. Tonight. Because it meant I was not guessing. I was understanding. The room continued to move around us, but I was no longer outside of it. I was reading it. Interpreting it. Standing inside the structure instead of being carried by it. "So what does that make me?" I asked quietly. The question came out before I could stop it. Not out of uncertainty. Out of clarity. He studied me for a moment, his gaze steady, unwavering. Then he answered, "That depends on what you do next." I let out a slow breath, my eyes moving across the room one more time, seeing it fully now. Not as something I had been pulled into. Not as something I had to survive. As something I could navigate. The difference was everything. "And if I decide to stay?" I asked. He did not hesitate. "Then you stop standing beside me," he said. I frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" His expression did not change, but his voice lowered, just enough to separate this moment from everything else. "It means you start standing on your own." The words landed with quiet force. Not a command. Not a demand. A shift. A line I could step across if I chose to. I looked at him, really looked this time, and realized something I had not fully understood until now. He was not pulling me into his world anymore. He was giving me the space to decide if I belonged in it at all. And for the first time since that night on the road, I was not reacting. I was choosing. The space between standing beside him and standing on my own was smaller than I expected. And heavier. It did not feel like a step. It felt like a shift in gravity. I stood there for a moment longer, the room moving around me, the quiet rhythm continuing without pause, but something inside me had changed. I was no longer waiting for direction. I was deciding where to place my attention. I took a slow breath and stepped forward. Not toward him. Toward the table where the earlier hesitation had happened. It was a small movement. Almost unnoticeable. But in a place like this, nothing went unseen. The man at the table glanced up as I approached, his expression controlled, professional, but his eyes sharpened slightly. Not defensive. Aware. "There is still a gap," I said, my voice calm, steady, matching the tone of the room. I did not raise it. I did not need to. He studied me for a second, then shifted his attention back to the screen. "Clarify," he said. I stepped closer, my focus locking onto the information in front of him. It was not immediately obvious. Not clean. But the pattern was there if you looked long enough. And I had learned how to look. "The adjustment you made solved the delay," I said. "But it created a new dependency." He paused. Just a fraction. But it was enough. "Explain," he said again. I pointed, not dramatically, just enough to guide the focus. "You are relying on a single confirmation point now," I continued. "If that shifts, everything behind it stalls again." The room did not stop, but something in it tightened. Attention redirected. Not just from him. From others nearby. Listening without appearing to listen. The man at the table leaned back slightly, his eyes narrowing as he recalculated. Then, slowly he nodded. "You are correct," he said. No hesitation. No resistance. Just recognition. He adjusted the sequence again, his movements more precise this time. The flow rebalancing in real time. The tension eased. The rhythm returned. Cleaner now. Stronger. I stepped back, not claiming the moment, not holding on to it, just returning to where I had been. But it was not the same position anymore. I could feel it. The shift. Subtle, but real. I turned slightly, my eyes finding him again. He had not moved. Not physically, but his attention was fully on me now. Not assessing. Not measuring. Something else. Something quieter. "You did not wait," he said. His voice was low, just for me. I shook my head slightly. "You said to pay attention," I replied. He held my gaze for a second longer. Then, slowly he nodded. Not approval. Not exactly. But acknowledgement. And somehow, that mattered more. The room continued to move, but I was no longer just part of the background. I could feel the difference in how people looked. Not directly, not openly, but the awareness had shifted. I was no longer undefined. I was something they had to account for. I let out a slow breath, my shoulders settling into a steadier posture. Is this what you meant? I asked quietly. Standing on my own? He did not answer right away. Instead, he stepped closer, just enough to close the space between us without breaking the balance of the room. This is where it starts, he said. Starts. Not finishes. Not completes. Just begins. I nodded once, absorbing that. Because I understood it. This was not about proving something in a single moment. It was about consistency, awareness, position, the things that defined everything here. A subtle movement near the screen drew my attention again. Another shift. Smaller this time, but still there. I did not speak immediately. I watched, tracked, confirmed. Then I moved. One step, then another. Not rushing, not hesitating, just aligning myself with the flow I had started to understand. You are anticipating now, he said behind me. I did not turn. I am trying to, I replied. The correction mattered. He let out a quiet breath, something close to approval, but not quite. I reached the edge of the group near the screen, my eyes scanning the data, the movement, the subtle tension building before it surfaced. There. A slight inconsistency. Not enough to disrupt. Yet. But it would. You are about to repeat the same mistake, I said, my voice calm, directed at no one and everyone at the same time. The person closest to the screen paused, their hand hovering for just a second before adjusting course. Not questioning. Not resisting. Just adapting. I watched the correction ripple through the system, the flow stabilizing before it ever had the chance to break. Prevention. Not reaction. I stepped back again, my breath steady, my mind clearer than it had been since the moment I pulled him off that road. Because now, I understood what he meant. This was not about surviving his world. It was about reading it, moving with it, becoming part of the structure without losing yourself inside it. I turned back toward him, my gaze steady. This is not about power, I said. He watched me closely. No, he replied. It is not. I took a slow breath, the realization settling fully now. It is about control. A faint shift crossed his expression. Not surprise. Not correction. Recognition. Yes, he said quietly. The word landed deeper than anything else tonight. Because it changed everything. The way I saw him. The way I saw this place. The way I saw myself standing inside it. I was not here by accident. Anymore. I was here because I chose not to walk away. And now, I was choosing what to become because of it. I looked around the room one more time, not as an outsider, not as someone trying to understand, but as someone who already did. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to stand. Enough to decide. And for the first time since this started, I was not following him. I was standing beside him because I chose to be there. The difference between standing beside him and standing as something on my own was no longer theoretical. It was visible, not in the way people spoke to me, not in the way they looked, but in the way the room adjusted without needing to be told. The flow no longer moved around me. It moved with me. I did not notice it at first. Not fully. It was too subtle, too precise. But once I saw it, I could not unsee it. I stood near the center again, my posture steady, my attention no longer searching for direction but scanning for alignment. The room continued its quiet rhythm, screens shifting, voices low, movements deliberate. But something underneath it had changed. The hesitation I had seen earlier did not return. The gaps closed faster. The corrections happened before they were needed. And I realized it was not just them adapting. It was me influencing it. You feel it now, he said behind me. I did not turn right away. I did not need to. I could hear the difference in his voice. Not testing. Not measuring. Recognizing. It is different, I said quietly. He stepped closer, just enough for his presence to settle beside mine again without overtaking it. Because you are no longer outside of it, he replied. I nodded slightly, my eyes still tracking the movement across the room. I am not reacting anymore, I said. I am anticipating. And shaping, he added. That word landed differently. Heavier. I turned my head slightly, looking at him from the corner of my eye. Is that what you expected? I asked. He held my gaze for a moment, longer than usual. Then he answered. No, the honesty in that caught me off guard. Completely. I frowned slightly. Then what did you expect? He looked back at the room, his expression returning to that controlled neutrality I had come to. Recognize. I expected you to hesitate longer, he said. I let out a quiet breath, something close to a laugh, but not quite. I did hesitate, I replied. You just do not count it. He glanced at me again, a faint shift in his expression, almost like amusement, but restrained. No, he said. I saw it. A pause. Then, more deliberate. You just did not stay there. The words settled deeper than I expected. Because they were true. I could feel it now. The moment I stepped forward. The moment I spoke. The moment I stopped waiting to be told what to do. It was not that I was fearless. It was that I moved anyway. A subtle shift near the far side of the room pulled my attention again. Another pattern. Smaller this time. But familiar. I stepped toward it without thinking, my body already aligned with the rhythm I had learned to read. There is a delay forming, I said, my voice calm, directed but not forceful. The person nearest the screen adjusted instantly, their hands moving with more precision, their focus sharpening. The delay disappeared before it could fully take shape. I stopped, watching the correction settle into the system, the flow stabilizing again. Then I stepped back, not claiming the moment, not holding it, just allowing it to integrate. When I turned, he was watching me, not assessing, not questioning, something else, something quieter. You are not just adapting anymore, he said. I tilted my head slightly. Then what am I doing? He did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked around the room, taking in the movement, the structure, the subtle ways it had shifted since I stepped into it. Then his gaze returned to me. You are being factored in, he said. The phrase was precise, intentional, and it meant more than it sounded. I felt it settle into me, the weight of it, the implication. Not a guest, not an observer, not even just a participant. A variable, something the system adjusted for, something it now relied on. I let out a slow breath, my shoulders relaxing into a steadier posture. That sounds permanent, I said. His expression did not change. Nothing here is temporary, he replied. The certainty in his voice did not feel like a warning. It felt like a foundation. I looked around the room again, but this time, it felt different. Not overwhelming. Not unfamiliar. Structured. Predictable in a way that made sense once you understood the patterns. And if I stop? I asked quietly. He did not hesitate. Then the system adjusts again, he said. I nodded once, absorbing that. Because it made sense. Nothing here depended on one person. Not even him. It adapted. It shifted. It continued. That was what made it strong. That was what made it dangerous. So I am not essential, I said. Not as a complaint. As a realization. He studied me for a second, then shook his head slightly. You are not required, he corrected. That is different. I frowned slightly. How? His voice lowered just enough to separate this moment from everything else. Required can be replaced, he said. Chosen cannot. The words settled into me, deeper than anything else he had said tonight. Because they changed the frame completely. I was not here because I had to be. I was here because I chose to stay. And because of that, I was something else entirely. I looked at him, really looked this time, and saw something I had not noticed before. Not control. Not calculation. Something steadier. Something that did not shift as easily as everything else in this place. You knew, I said quietly. He did not ask what I meant. You knew I would not leave. He held my gaze, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, slowly he spoke. I knew you would not pretend you could, he said. The distinction mattered. It always did with him. I let out a quiet breath, my eyes drifting back to the room, to the movement, to the structure that no longer felt foreign. I could feel it now. Not just the rhythm. The responsibility. The weight of being part of something that did not stop, did not pause, did not allow space for hesitation once you stepped into it. So this is it, I said softly. This is where I stand. He stepped slightly closer, just enough for his presence to align with mine again without overtaking it. For now, he said. I almost smiled at that. Not because it was uncertain, but because it was honest. Nothing here was fixed. Everything moved. Everything evolved. Including me. I looked forward again, my posture steady, my mind clear, my place no longer undefined. And for the first time since I stepped into his world, I was not trying to understand where I belonged. I already knew. The moment I stopped asking where I belonged was the moment everything became clear. Not easier. Not lighter. Just clearer. The room continued to move with that same quiet precision, every action aligned, every decision flowing into the next without hesitation, but now I could feel where I fit inside it. Not as a guest, not as an exception, as a point of balance. I stood there, my posture steady, my attention sharp, no longer searching for direction because I already understood the pattern. And more importantly, I trusted myself inside it. "You are different now," he said beside me. I did not look at him immediately. I did not need to. I could hear it in his voice. Not observation. Not curiosity. Recognition. "No," I said quietly. "I am just not pretending anymore." He did not respond right away. The silence between us was not empty. It never was. It carried meaning the same way everything else in this place did. I turned my head slightly, meeting his gaze, steady and unshaken. "You said this was about survival," I continued. "You were wrong." A faint shift crossed his expression. Not disagreement. Interest. "Explain," he said. I held his gaze, the words forming clearly now, not rushed, not uncertain. "Survival is reacting," I said. "This is not reacting." I gestured lightly toward the room, toward the movement, toward the structure that had become something I could read as easily as breathing. "This is control." He watched me for a moment longer than usual, something deeper settling into his expression. Then, slowly he nodded. "Not correction. Agreement." "Yes," he said quietly. The word felt final. Not as an ending. As confirmation. I let out a slow breath, my eyes drifting back across the room, watching the system move, feeling the rhythm without needing to chase it. And then I saw it. Not a disruption. Not a mistake. Something else. A shift that did not belong to the pattern we had been maintaining. Subtle. Almost invisible. But it was there. "Something is off," I said. My voice did not rise. It did not need to. His attention sharpened instantly, his gaze following mine without hesitation. "Where?" he asked. I stepped forward, my movements aligned with the flow, not interrupting it, just entering it at the right point. "There," I said, indicating a section near the far edge of the room. "It is too smooth." He paused. Just a fraction. Enough to register the difference. "Too smooth," he repeated. I nodded once, my focus tightening. "Everything here has resistance," I said. "Adjustments. Micro delays. This does not." The realization settled as I spoke it. Not a flaw. A signal. The absence of friction where there should have been some. His expression changed then. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to tell me I was not wrong. He stepped forward, closing the distance to the area I had identified, his presence shifting the space instantly. The people nearby adjusted, their focus sharpening, their movements becoming more precise. He did not speak immediately. He observed. Confirmed. Then his voice came, low and controlled. "Recheck the source," he said. The person nearest the system paused, their hands hovering for a second before moving again, their attention narrowing as they followed the instruction. The room did not stop, but the tension shifted. Focus redirected. Not panic. Never panic. Just awareness. I stood just behind him now, my attention locked on the same point, tracking the adjustment as it unfolded. And then it happened. A small correction. Almost invisible. But it revealed everything. The pattern realigned. The smoothness broke. The natural resistance returned. Balance restored. I exhaled slowly, the tension in my chest easing, not because it was over, but because it had been handled before it could become something larger. He turned slightly, his gaze finding mine again. This time, there was no question in it. No test. Just certainty. "You saw it first," he said. I nodded once. "It did not belong," I replied. He held my gaze for a moment longer. Then something shifted in his expression. Not softer, not warmer, but resolved. "You understand now," he said. It was not a question. I felt it settle into me, deeper than anything else. Not as a realization. As truth. "Yes," I said quietly. The room continued to move. The rhythm uninterrupted, the structure intact, but everything felt different now. Not because it had changed. Because I had. I was not learning anymore. I was operating. The difference was everything. He stepped closer, just enough to stand beside me again, not ahead, not behind. Equal. Deliberate. "Then there is one last thing you need to know," he said. I turned my head slightly, my attention shifting fully to him. "What?" I asked. His gaze held mine, steady, unshaken, but this time, there was something underneath it. Not control, not calculation, something deeper, something that did not shift with the rest of the room. "You were never just brought here to be protected," he said. The words landed quietly, but they changed everything. I felt it immediately, the shift, the weight, the meaning behind what I had assumed from the very beginning. Then why am I here? I asked. My voice was steady, but something inside me was not. He did not look away, not even for a second. Because you are the only one who saw me before any of this, he said. The memory hit instantly. The road, the rain, the moment I chose not to leave him there. Not because I understood who he was. Because I did not. I saw him as human before anything else. I felt my breath catch, just slightly, the realization settling deeper than anything else tonight. And that matters? I asked quietly. He nodded once. More than anything in this room, he said. The words did not feel like power. They did not feel like control. They felt real. And in a place like this, that was the rarest thing of all. I looked at him, really looked this time, and saw something I had not seen before. Not the man who controlled everything. Not the one everyone adjusted around. Just him. The one I pulled out of the storm. The one who looked at me like I was the only variable he did not calculate. I let out a slow breath, my posture steady, my mind clear, my place no longer something I questioned. Because now I understood the truth. I did not just enter his world that night. I changed it. And somehow, he knew it before I did.